Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another of Spark's investor webinars, which I'm very happy to welcome you to today. Today, we have got another two very exciting companies on the platform, and they are going to be giving a presentation today. First of all, we'll have NestiFi Technologies. NestiFi is a EIS at 50%. You'll find out in good detail what each of those are as the presentations go on. So, without further ado, I think what we'll do is introduce you to the first of our companies today, and that is NestiFi. And we're joined by Niall Dennehy and Dominic Sherlock, who are the promoters of NestiFi, of course. So, NestiFi itself is a B2B family wealth platform, and it's assisting companies, financial institutions, retain clients as wealth is passed from generation to generation. It's sold as a white label product to financial companies as a B2B product, and has just announced its first major contract with a credit union group from the US. And Niall will go into a bit more detail about that as he on. So Niall, you're very welcome. And Dominic, you are, of course, as well. NestiFi itself, it's got a pre-money valuation of 10 million euros. It's got a US VC investing in this round as well for a sum of 430,000 euros. Enterprise Ireland are also investing in this round, 300,000 from them. And as I said, it's a 50% EIS, meaning that if you invest 1,000 euros, you're getting 500 back as tax relief if you are a qualifying taxpayer here in Ireland. So guys, you're very welcome. If you'd like to share your screen, and then I'll let you crack on with your presentation and quick demo of the product.
Great, happy to. And Chris, thank you for the opportunity. Great to be here. We appreciate everybody attending the webinar and excited to tell everybody about NestiFi. Before I share my slides, one thing that I wanted to talk about was, again, family. And family is at the center of everything that we do. And ultimately, I wanted to talk about one person is my mother, how she was the inspiration behind this, plus my 4 children. And I hope that some of them are listening today, but it really is all about the family. And a big part of that reason is back in 1987, I grew up in a small village in Cork called Ballydesmond, and right next door to our house was the local credit union. And that credit union was set up by, and as was the movement in Ireland, a lady called Nora Herlihy, who was the founder of the credit union movement in Ireland. And what happened back then in 1987, when I was 7, my mother would have taken me by the hand, walked me to the local credit union, opened up an account on my behalf. But what we're seeing nowadays is before children ever take that journey, sometimes they're being intercepted by Revolut, by Robinhood, by crypto.com. And the idea is to, as you mentioned, to make this available to institutions like credit unions so that they can not just retain, but they can attain the next generation. And also, I'm a father of 4. I've got 4 kids ranging from 1, 7, 10, and 13, who all live in Goatstown in Dublin. And one of the things that I observed over the past couple of years in particular was an increasing amount of Amazon boxes showing up on our doorstep, which were being gifted to the kids, cash being stuffed into an envelope for christening, communion, confirmation, etc. And I figured there's got to be a simpler way to do this to enable families to come together in a collaborative manner to invest and save on behalf of children. But really, it's all about building AI that will get to know you from birth through inheritance. So with that in mind, I will now go over to the slides and showcase what we've been building. And very excited to do so. And again, thank you for the opportunity and to everybody who has tuned in. So bear with me one moment and I'm going to bring up my screen here. Okay, so basically NestiFi is all about AI that will help keep families investing for multiple generations. And it's a platform for the financial institutions out there to retain clients across the great wealth transfer. And we're going to talk about some figures very shortly, and they are truly staggering. But the organizations that we're targeting and that we're doing really well with at the moment are credit unions and community banks, primarily in the United States of America, but not just America, also here in Europe, where there's a huge opportunity as well. Because a lot of them right now at the moment, they're losing customers, they're losing them fast. If you think back to my journey with the credit union in Cork and Ballydesmond, back in 1987, that same credit union today has got a huge amount of trust with the local community, as do all of the credit unions around the world. And next week, I'm going to be in Illinois, in Iowa, and Wisconsin, meeting with credit unions, including our first paying client. And the thing that we found in common across both sides of the Atlantic is that they're all struggling to retain and attain new customers. And we're building a solution for them. And the number is staggering. In the US, over the next 25 years, it's expected that 124 trillion, that's trillion with a T, is going to be passed from parents to their children, to their grandchildren. And that's a huge amount of wealth. And what we're seeing now is that there's really, across Europe and America, a K-shaped society is starting to be developed, whereby there's a huge pass down of wealth, but it's not being distributed evenly. And a lot of people here in Ireland, in Europe, and the States are, to be blunt about it, are financially illiterate. And financial literacy is something that we want to help families build together and to come together to be more financially literate. And some of the people out there who talked about this include Fortune, and Fortune magazine called it the great transfer of wealth. It's going to be bigger than ever, and millennials will get the greatest cut of this. And what we're also seeing, though, is that this great transfer of wealth is also becoming what the institutions that we're dealing with refer to as a great risk transfer. And it's becoming a great risk transfer for a number of reasons. And what we found is that 81% of people end up firing their parents' financial advisor post-inheritance, which is a staggering figure. Sometimes that's because the people who inherit the cash are dealing with older people who may be not in tune with their needs. But there's a big shortage of advisors projected over the next 20 years in the US. And they reckon that there's going to be 100,000 advisor shortage. And one of the things that we're able to do with AI to help address this is to help extend and augment the capabilities of advisors. And the other thing we found is that the 2/3 of millennials, and you can extend that now to Gen Z, they expect advanced digital offerings. And 50% of the people surveyed, they lament the lack of tools that are available on preferred digital channels from existing financial institutions. And the example that people constantly point to here in Europe and in Ireland is Revolut. Look at the market share that they have. Look at what they're doing. Look at the products that they're bringing to the market. And we want to enable people like your credit union, like Unpost, like the pillar banks here, to compete with the modern neobanks and the modern technology providers to be able to offer these more compelling and engaging services. And one of the things that we talked about there was the USA and that 124 trillion amount. But in Europe, it's as big. And what we're seeing is that even if you take our little island here in Ireland, Miles O'Grady, the CEO of Bank of Ireland, recently came out in the Irish Times and said that in a study they published with Goodbody, that over 295 billion euro is now being held by what they term retired households, and that will be passed down from these retirees to the next generation. So even in Ireland, there's a huge amount of wealth. And if you look at Europe then as a whole, by the year 2030, it's expected that that figure is going to be 3.5 trillion. And to give you some more food for thought for people in the audience here, they estimate that there's between 170 and 192 billion euro sitting on deposit overnight with banks here in Ireland, earning relatively, in fact, some would say practically zero interest. And a lot of that stems from the fact that people are not completely literate about money and what it can do for them. And there's a big push, and the Irish government, as part of their EU presidency, will be behind this with the Savings and Investment Union, which is a movement that is aimed to harmonize savings and investment products across the European Union to mobilize pools of capital. But we see these as really being mega trends that we are positioning the product for. And in Ireland, to take that case, if and when we launch a personal investment account, also known as a savings and investment account, which we project will happen next year, if Simon Harris and team can legislate for that, there will be an explosion in demand and people will take this up, hopefully in the same way that people did with the SSIA product back in the noughties. The other interesting thing that we found as part of the research is that by the second generation, in terms of people who inherit wealth, the staggering fact is that 70% of families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% lose their wealth by the third. And one of the ambitions that we have with AI is to be able to put what we would term an AI-powered family office at your fingertips or in your pocket with our technology. That is something that we're building towards with the technology. And to go back to Ireland, again, a few things to point to. It is a small market, but again, being a parent of 4 children and living here and being based here and being very passionate about the country and what we achieve in the near future, we really do want Irish households to be more involved in direct investments. What we found is right now, according to the study, only 2.2% of Irish households hold financial assets that are direct investments, which is one of the lowest in Europe. And if you look at the EU average, that's over 7.5%. So again, part of the reason that we're very bullish on Ireland, and we want this to succeed here, and we'll show you a demo shortly as to how that can work. One of the things then that we're really building out and we're focusing on is AI. And what we're doing is building AI that will serve every part of the generation. So what we're doing is from 0 to 5, our technology is going to enable parents to open an account. Seb, who is our AI-powered agent, will start to learn your family values in the same way that a parent would teach their children about money. Seb will get to know their family. It will help support automated contributions. And at the age then of 6 to 12, the ambition for us is to enable families and children to start to learn to fly. And that is then with things like gamified education, practice investments. And by the ages of 13 to 17, we want people to be able to take part in real investment concepts, learn about family collaboration, and have conversations about money. And by the age of 25, we want children, families, and everybody involved to be able to open independent accounts. And ultimately, then the sale that we have is that they would stay with the institution and that the institution is building a deeper relationship with everybody that they serve. And the end goal then for us is that from birth to inheritance, we want to enable an institution to build a 25-year relationship that no other competitor can replicate. And we believe we've got the technology and the team to do that. And to elaborate a little bit more about Seb then, which is our AI, one of the things that we're building with Seb is that it will enable people and the technology to perceive, which means monitoring the family's financial data, look at life events, look at the market conditions in real time. And on top of that, then it can reason on your behalf. It can apply behavioral science. It can use financial modeling. And then over time, it'll be able to act and to execute on your behalf and act as what we would call an autonomous AI agent that would orchestrate financial decisions across the entire family. So very exciting. And if you think about it then, one of the things that we're building with Seb is we're enabling personalized financial guidance. We're also enabling adaptive learning so that depending on your age, depending on your demographic, we will learn and adapt content to meet the needs of you and your family. We're going to offer interactive support, which means that 24/7, an institution can serve anybody. And then we want to ensure that we've got future-ready youth so that parents and children can manage investments and that Seb would learn from every financial interaction and leverage AI to offer a more tailored financial experience. So that's a little bit about NestiFi. And Chris, what I'm going to do now, and thanks to everybody for listening, is hop on over to a demo that I'm going to fire up here on my phone. So I will need about 10 seconds to do that. But Chris, while I'm doing that, let me pause here and pass it back over to you. And I'm going to fire up a demo. So bear with us for one moment.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's great. Thanks very much, Niall. We've got a number of questions in already. So just for a reminder, the Q&A button is behind the More on the bottom of your screen. So click on the 3 buttons on More and you'll find the Q&A box and you can type in your question there. So Niall, back to you with the demo.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chris. So we put together a demo, and at the start of the presentation, I spoke about my 4 children. So to give a little bit of personal information away, my 4 children are Clara, Cassandra, Charlotte, and Colin. Clara is a 1-year-old baby. Cassandra is a 7-year-old girl. Charlotte is my teenager, and Colin is my 7-year-old boy. And what we're going to do is show you a journey that enables the family to come together in a collaborative manner. And in this case, it's my wife, Jane. And I want to show you how then she can make a contribution from WhatsApp message. We did demo recently to OnPlus. We showed them this as a demo, but to be clear, we haven't signed them up yet as a paying client. I want to put that out there. But we're very hopeful that organizations like OnPlus will be very interested in what we're doing. So to walk you through the demo, what I can see is I've got a nest egg for each child set up there. I can dive into a nest egg for Clara. I can see what's been set up on her behalf. I can look at Charlotte there. But the journey that we're going to go through here is to go into Clara's profile and set a target for her, which is a life event. And in this case, this is something that everybody in Ireland can relate to. We want to enable Clara and the extended family to put together a nest for a house deposit. So I'm going to set a goal of 25,000 euro. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite a family member to be able to make a contribution to that house deposit then on behalf of Clara. So I can share a link, I can go to WhatsApp, I can pass it over to my wife, Jane. When I then navigate to my WhatsApp chat, what I can see is a message is going to be there. And Jane is then able to tap on this message to help Clara reach her future goal. What pops up as a web link that's accessible through email, through iMessage, through WhatsApp. I can select the amount that I want to donate or to gift. In this case, it's €250. The person making that contribution can specify the amount. They can add a message that could be associated with that. So think back to what I mentioned about cash being stuffed into an envelope. The idea here is that with Apple Pay or with bank account or with the debit card, the parent, in this case, my wife Jane, can make a contribution towards a deposit for a future home for Clara, and that becomes part of Clara's nest egg. So that's a whistle-stop tour. We've got the invest option. We've got a savings investment here. We've got financial literacy built in, and we can also plan for and talk about what is going to be enabled in the future for the kids. And at the back end, we haven't got full time to go through it today, but there's a dashboard that will be available to advisors for the institution where they can see all of that information. They can see who has made a contribution, who hasn't, and they can better serve than the people that they're dealing with. But think about that as being what we refer to as a white label solution that can be made available to any institution. And right now, our target demographic are credit unions, community banks in the US, as we would call tier 2 financial institutions, and also here people like An Post, the credit unions in Ireland. And one of the things to note about Ireland and why it's a perfect place to start a company like this is around 70% of the population here in Ireland have an account with the credit union, like I do since 1987, back in Ballydesmond, which I still get statements for to this day. And this is really why we think we've got something hugely compelling, exciting, and we are hopefully going to take a big chunk and share of the market in the near future. So thanks to everybody for their attention. I hope you found the personal journey interesting. I've also got my amazing CEO, Dominic, with me here, who's going to help walk through the questions. He's far more efficient and organized than I am, especially around finances. So Dominic and I will chime in and answer some questions. So thanks again for the attention.
No, thanks very much indeed. And we're joined obviously by Fergal as well, who will help me on asking those questions. But I've got the first one here. So question in, why now? Why is this the moment for NestiFi?
Maybe I'll take number one. This will reinforce some of the information that I mentioned already, Chris. But again, if you look at this big transfer of wealth that's happening, on both sides of the Atlantic, it's actually a global megatrend. Think about the things that are happening this week. You've got the SpaceX IPO. You've got all of the AI companies going. We believe that families aren't being served and where they are right now. And there needs to be better tools to enable families to come together in a collaborative manner. And I go back to that simple example. I think about it myself as a parent, and I've got the willingness to gift to my nieces, my nephews, my friends, my family. And I find that our family needs to know more about money. So all of these trends and the volume of money coming together, we believe, form this mega trend that institutions need to take advantage of. So it's ultimately, if I were to sum it up, great transfer of wealth, families needing more modern tools, and the institutions haven't got a really good way of dealing with their base so that they can retain and attain, is how we would put it.
Great. Fergal.
Excellent. Yeah. So I have some questions just around the business model. So what your monthly costs, obviously there's an example there given Revolut, it's free, and then you pay for the premium $7.99 and $19.99. So from a consumer point of view, what's your business model? And then also from the bank side as well, if you could just break that down for us guys, it'd be great.
Well, yeah, we've got several revenue streams, both from the actual rollout of our platform at the institutions. We've got basis points based on assets under management, and we've got upselling opportunities. We can go in very modular offerings, very low cost to institutions, maybe with a learning module first, and then land and expand, something that immediately adds real value for them. And we can scale depending on what size the organization already is, meet them where they are, and different offerings for different size businesses.
So initially, there's a payment that the bank makes to onboard the credit union, or the example there you gave is on Post, and then there's a yearly then, or is monthly then based off that? Okay, very good. And just as a kind of follow on that, just merging in another question regarding the upselling, does the app, or will it potentially support tax planning? Is there any kind of a future there in terms of the tax angle?
Pass it over to Tom.
Yes, well, we've engaged the financial planners to advise us on what our AI tools can help with there. And basically, this is a tool that helps advisors already in the institutions to maximize their conversations with their existing customers. So we offer the guardrails that they can set up themselves based on their own policies, etc. But in the States, things like UGMA and the various Invest America accounts, etc., the guardrails are already there. We just apply them. So very flexible depending on the market that we're in and the needs of the individual customer.
Very good.
Thanks.
There's quite a long question here. It's about the superiority that you have over your competitors at the moment, and how is that going to be maintained as the years roll on? Because obviously they'll be able to develop something similar behind you. Is it going to be a land grab, first of all? Is that how you're going to do it? So yeah, how do you expect to do that over many, many years?
Yeah, and I can tell you, Chris, what we've been doing. We've been meeting lots of clients, both sides of the Atlantic. Next week, for example, I'm going to be in, I think I mentioned Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa, meeting with clients. And what we found is that the technology expertise and capabilities that a lot of these institutions have that are smaller, they haven't got an in-house technical team. They're often going through what we would call a systems integration vendor or a bigger company, which sometimes is not really willing to meet their needs. But our sweet spot is going to be these, what we would term tier 2, smaller institutions like a credit union. And we are building one scalable platform for everybody, but there will be some bespoke development done on their behalf as well, depending on the size of the institution. One of the big things that people talk about now at the moment in the media, which was made, I guess, famous by people like Palantir selling their technology, is the forward deployed engineering model. And we believe now in the age of AI, it's quite easy to really spin up and develop an application, and you can clone something that exists. If anybody's been looking at Claude Fable 5, a coding tool released this week, there are all sorts of examples of people out there cloning applications that already exist. But we believe that in terms of winning market share, creating something innovative, it's going to be more important than ever to really listen to the needs of the customer. But AI at scale really helps you to be more in tune with their needs and their requirements. And some element of bespoke customization by getting out there, meeting people, pressing the flesh, and knowing our customers better is reason that we believe in the future an organization like us is better served to win. Some of the more incumbent people who are selling into our segment, maybe Fiserv, who would be a publicly listed company. You've got FIS, Alchemy, etc. There are some European players. But what we've found with them in general is that they're not very agile, they're not very nimble. And in terms of going through a process to work with them, you have to prove that you are good enough to work with them. So we believe there's a massive opportunity for companies like ourselves to come in and really meet and exceed the needs of the customers that we're serving. That's being evidenced now by the launch, which we'll put out a press release about tomorrow, hopefully, with our clients in the US to talk about the $6.4 billion under management with our launch partner collectively that we're seeking to get launched with.
Very good. Virgil.
Brilliant. Just a question on fraud prevention and awareness. Is there any kind of safeguards built in to the platform, guys?
Yeah, and what we say, Fergal, is we are what we would term agnostic to know your customer and anti-money laundering solutions. And the clients that we're speaking with right now, and the first client that we've signed, they, for example, have the KYC AML solution to scan people's passports, their ID. I think it's okay to mention them. Alloy, who would be a pretty well-known organization for doing those checks. And our technology then works seamlessly with that. And what we do is we would take that instruction from the KYC AML provider, we parse that through our technology, and nobody can get onto our platform and nobody can make a payment or make an investment without having gone through that process. But that's something that we can provide as a sell and add-on. We can bill for that and charge per authentication. But in most cases, we anticipate that it'll already have been done by the partners. And if you think about the business model that we have, that friction in a lot of cases will be reduced. To give you an example, the credit union that we're launching with in the US, they already have their clients pre-authenticated. They've gone through the KYC AML process, and we're just taking that flag or that information from them and saying that every account that's opened up with your NestiFi application has already been vetted and validated.
Brilliant.
Okay, you mentioned the transfer of wealth and inheritance tax as a major factor for the reason of the 70% that's lost from generation to generation. Does the app essentially provide a family way to circumvent that tax, or is it essentially if it's a joint or shared account?
So the way we're building this really is, and we've got to be pretty careful how we do it, because we can't give any financial advice ourselves just yet. We're not regulated. We plan to be at some stage in the future. But what we're doing is really surfacing insights and data and providing guidance to an advisor at an institution. And ultimately, then everything will go through these institutions. But to give you a very basic example, and when we went back to the inception of the company, we talked to about 50 people, seeing what they would need and what they wouldn't, starting here in Ireland. One of the things that was pointed out to us is that if you had an AI, which we have right now, that can get to know you, get to know your situation. And for example, if you live in Ireland and you've got children, one of the things that we can embed into either the onboarding process or can be given to you as part of the advice is that, okay, I now know you've got 3 children. Did you know, according to the small gift exemption, aka the SGE in Ireland, you can gift up to €3,000 per year tax-free to a child. And over time, that can compound. So over a 10-year period, you can give €30,000, if you take Ireland as an example, to your children. And later on in life, if you wanted to, give them a property or give them something else, that can be written off against tax. But what we found is a huge amount of people, and in fact, very few even know that exist. And the people that do, to take the Irish context, since I'm assuming a lot of the Irish audience will be here, probably are working with an institution, a wealth manager already, and they're paying for or receiving this advice. But a lot of people have no idea about this. So when I went back to talking about SEB or AI, getting to know you, getting to know your family, it can piece together a picture about you, who you are, how many kids you have. I can offer you guidance, but that's only pushed to that family. Take that example of me as a parent through the institution right now. But yes, it can provide that information, but it has to go through the institution.
Okay, very good. Final question, and it's got to be a quick answer. What does success look like? Where do you expect to be going with the business that you've got?
So ideally, hundreds of institutions leveraging our technology, preferably thousands in that demographic, credit unions, community banks, etc. Over time, we want to serve wealth managers, RIAs, even pension planners, and generating hopefully hundreds of millions of euro in revenue and being known as the #1 platform in the world, being leveraged by, in the future, tier 1 and tier 2 institutions to help with the great transfer of wealth.
Very good. There's been a lot more questions that we haven't had time to ask. So what we'll do, we'll get those sent over to NestiFi, to them all, and we'll publish that on the campaign page in the next day or two. So please, if your question hasn't been asked, then you'll find an answer to your question there. But anyway, Niall, Dominic, thank you very much for your time.